Hey everyone, good morning. It's Rob Folia and Jessica Klein here with Folia Properties at Keller Williams, and we're coming to you live today to give you our September market update. It's Friday, September 4th, and so we've got the most up-to-date statistics on the Nashville real estate market. And so, Jessica, what do you think? You want to just dive right in and get into it?
Yeah, this graph is really making me making me want to talk about it.
Well, me too. It's super interesting to me, and so let's just start right here. I mean, what I've pulled up and what we're looking at right here are basically the months of supply. And when we talk about months of supply, we've talked about in past videos. So I'd invite you to go and check out any of the old ones if you need a more in-depth explanation. However, what we're talking about with months of supply is real estate's a very supply and demand driven industry. It's something where pricing rises and falls based on the amount of supply versus the amount of demand that's out there. And so what we've been seeing here recently has been the level of supply is dropping significantly. And so we've got the months of supply pulled up here for just all of Nashville. And before I even go into these numbers, anything I left out there, Jessica, that I should have talked about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, months of supply is just if you have the same number of houses stay on the market and no new ones come on, then that's how long it takes to sell every single one of those houses.
And
That's the
it's
general, yeah.
definitely, and it's interesting to me how quickly it's plummeting right now, because normally we see that happen toward the end of the year. You can see, and we're going to pull up another one in just a second, of homes for sale. However, you can see with months of supply, it's almost like a little bit of a jagged looking bell curve every year that it repeats. So we're going back about 3.5 years now to beginning of 2017, and it rises steadily the first couple of months of the year. It has a little bit of ups and downs throughout the middle of the year, and then it drops significantly in December, which is normal because you have less people who are saying, "Hey, I want to move around the holidays." It's just kind of human behavior, at least in our area. People just don't move around then. It's the norm. You see that same thing repeat here in 2018, a significant drop off at the end of the year, and then last year as well, a significant drop off the last 3 months of the year last year.
Yep.
The interesting thing to me about it is though, so if you look at last year where the trend line was in July, August, and into September of last year, you can see in June into July and into August, it was a steady climb. I mean, that's where it's kind of hitting the peak of the bell curve. And it was similar in years past, June, July into August, same thing. It's climbing. June and July, it's pretty steady right here, 3.7 to 3.6. But again, it's a pretty much the top of the bell curve until it starts to go down. The interesting thing to me about this is that June, July into August of this year, it's a pretty significant drop off from June down into August, where we went from 4 months of supply in June to almost three in August. And that's across all price points. And let me even just show, I would call, 230 to 334 a pretty average price point in Nashville. It's a good first time home buyer price point in Nashville. So you can see the same thing. And you can see how there's only almost 2 months of inventory out there, which is insanely low.
Yeah, and I mean, in both of these graphs that you've shown, even though they're at different levels, you can almost, copy and paste that shape for
Mhm.
each year, right? And then, I mean, in this one, this image in particular, I mean, look how different this year has looked compared to the shape of other years. And not only the shape, I mean, it's definitely a significant drop
Well,
compared to years previous.
and let's just go back the max that this thing shows, just for comparison's sake, and let's just
Yeah.
go to price ranges to show. So that way we're seeing basically the average in Nashville, and you can see how every year this kind of bell curve, even all the way back to when the market was really rough back in 2009. You could see how even then it was the same thing happening. There was a peak in the middle of the year, then it dropped at the end of the year. It rose in the middle and it dropped at the end of the year, and it kept doing that for years. And so this is, to me, it's insanely interesting, just like you said, Jessica, that we're seeing a drop off here in August, a very significant drop off. And this is really driven by the homes for sale stat. Like you and I
Yeah.
had we went into depth when we just, between you and me, we were talking about this the other day, and how it's like the same type of bell curve where we see, because again, months of supply, it's all driven by supply and demand. Homes for sale are the supply in real estate. Like that's what people buy. That's what's out there for people. And so it's the same exact type of trend line that repeats year after year. It goes up in the springtime, kind of stays at the top of that bell curve in the summer months, and then once fall hits and the leaves start changing, it drops down. And so all the way back in 2010 and 2009, same things were happening. And you can see the overall trend line was inventory was lowering, and that supply was equaling demand as we were getting close to a balanced market. And since we've been in a seller's market the last 5 or 6 years, you can see how low inventory's been, and yet it's still been that consistent trend line. That's a consistent bell curve of raising at the beginning of the year, flattening out in the middle of the year, and then dropping in December.
Yeah, and I mean, this year it's almost like we cut out those middle months, and now the market's doing today what it normally does in winter. And I'll be really interested to see what happens over the next few months, as maybe people get motivated to list their houses because of the high demand out there. I mean, we've seen 3, 4 of our latest listings go, I mean, literally like that, like hours. In and it could be a dramatic increase in inventory, or we could just go right into the end of the year and just see more decrease. It'll be very interesting to see that and how it affects the market.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we don't know what September, October, November, and December are going to bring for inventory levels. All we know is what we're looking at right now. And like you said, it's almost like that middle part of the bell curve was just cut out, to where inventory levels were rising a little bit at the beginning of the year like normal. And even during COVID times, when or I guess technically we're still in COVID times, but even when all this stuff was starting and shutdowns were starting, inventory levels were rising, because that's just when traditionally people say, all right, well, I'm being relocated for my job, I need to move, or school's ending and we're now empty nesters, so we need to downsize, or maybe we need to get into a school zone for school, or whatever it is. Like, that's when traditionally this stuff does rise, and you can see that. That's in 2019, it was steadily rising. I mean, yeah, a little dip here, but it's basically flat between May and June, and then it continues to rise until it falls starting in October. Same thing here. Started falling in October into
Yeah,
November.
very predictable.
Exactly. Whereas this isn't. This tells me really two things. It tells me, first off, the biggest reason for this is the fact that supply is not keeping up with demand. It tells me that, and that's the same with the months of supply that we were looking at. However, the fact that there are more buyers that are out there saying, hey, we want to buy a home, than there are sellers. And so, like, this is like, the proof is in the pudding. So when we talk about a hot market and how there is a shortage of homes, like, that's not just lip service to try to get a sign in the yard and get a listing. That's to allow people and let people know, let our consumers, let y'all know who are watching this video, that this is the market that we're in. And if you're a seller wanting to take advantage of optimal market conditions for you, this is the time, because there aren't enough homes to go around for all the buyers.
Right, correct. Yep. And on the other side of that coin, if you're a buyer, I mean, you do really have to be as ready as possible so that you can present really appealing offers to sellers. And this is not really the market where you're going to go out and go to open houses on your own and kind of find something. I mean, like, you kind of have to track a house from coming soon before offers, or before you can do showings, and then be ready to strike the second it hits the market.
The other thing this tells me is that this very well could be somewhat of an aberration to the overall trend line that we were seeing for our real estate market here in Middle Tennessee. And so, obviously, when I'm looking at this, you're seeing lots of peaks and valleys, like we were talking about, that repeating bell curve every single month. Well, you can still see an overall trend line if you look at just the top of the bell curves every single year. It was going down, and it's almost like what is it, like a sound? Is it a sine wave, or whichever one of the math waves that's always going up and down, up and down?
Oh, Lord, that's too many years back, Rob.
Yeah, no kidding. That's basically what it's doing, is that it was going down and then it was starting to bounce back up. I mean, you can see how last year in 2019, just take August of 2019, where things have been kind of at their most recent peak in terms of the amount of homes for sale of 3,300. I mean, that's the highest it had been, going back to 2012. And that was where the market was, quote unquote, balanced when we look at the months of supply. And so the trend line was arching back that way. That's why before COVID hit, we were telling people that the market was transitioning. This is a reason why, because it was just naturally flowing back into being a balanced market and eventually into a buyer's market. This makes me wonder, with the absence of the amount of homes that are out there, this makes me wonder if this will be almost like a lost year for home sales, meaning the people who didn't put their home on the market, if they're just going to end up never doing it and saying, all right, well, forget it, we'll just stay put and we're happy where we are, and that's perfectly fine if they're truly happy there, or if it's going to result in almost a surplus of homes for sale next year. And if there were, say, 1,000 homes that didn't hit the market in March and in April and in May, if all of a sudden next year, instead of May 2021 having 3,000 homes for sale, what if that maybe there was a gap of 500 or 1,000, instead of it, instead of that natural increase being say 500, so 3,500, maybe it jumps up to 4,000 or 4,300 or somewhere in there. And when there's that big of a fluctuation in terms of where buyer demand is versus the amount of homes for sale, that's when we see a market shift happen, because that's when we see it go from the sellers having all the advantage, like we currently see, to buyers having all the advantage because they have more options to choose from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's a really interesting thing to sit here and speculate about. I mean, like, my gut is saying that, and now, I mean, gut, we always joke, stands for gave up thinking. But
Mhm.
my gut here is saying that since this is an artificial change in the market, that there's going to be a correction immediately following it. Now, we don't know when the end of this is, or when there might be a correction, or if there's going to be a correction. But I'm excited to see, definitely.
Well, absolutely, and because it opens up opportunity, because there's opportunity in every market that's out there. I mean, like we were talking about how this is earlier in this video, about how this is an opportunity for sellers, how sellers have the opportunity because they have all the leverage. There's less homes out there, and so they can kind of call the shots. I mean, like you said before about multiple offers on so many listings, or selling within hours. We're not just selling within hours because because they happen to write an offer. We're selling
Right.
within hours because it's either full price or above full price, and it's got very attractive terms for the seller. So they go, cool, well, let's take it, let's do it. Why wait? And so that's what I mean in terms of sellers taking advantage. Well, what if the market were to transition back to, if you can see my mouse, kind of all the way back up to here in terms of the inventory levels, and if it were to do that basically overnight, and to do that say by May of next year, if inventory levels are back to where they were in 2011. Well, if that's the case, yeah, there still is demand, but I think at that point, buyers are going to be able to call more shots. They're going to be able to then negotiate a little bit. It may open up more opportunities for investors as well. And so,
Hmm.
just like you said, it is pure speculation. However, it's not just speculation based on a gut feeling when we're looking at trend lines and saying, all right, well, if COVID didn't hit this year, this is where we were thinking the market was going to end up. I mean, at the very least, it was going to be somewhere where my mouse is, which I know with the way the numbers show up on here is kind of blocking it. But at the very least, we were going to see inventory levels like we saw in 18 and 19, where the peaks were pretty flat, or pretty pretty similar. Or at the at probably worst case scenario for a seller, we were going to see the trend line just continue to arc upward, and it'd become more of a buyer's market.
Yep. So I guess all we can say at this point is we'll see. But what we can do right now, like we always say in these, I mean, speculation is fun and interesting. But what we have here is actual data, and
Mhm.
we can speak to, I mean, this is absolutely reflecting what we've been seeing in the market with our listings and with our buyers.
Well, exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because the whole point of these videos, and we've said it multiple times, the whole point is for us to educate and inform, and basically let our consumers know what's actually happening. I don't mean to talk bad about anybody in my industry. However, I see so many real estate agents just post, oh, the market's so hot because we got all these offers, or, I just pended all these buyers. I'm so busy and things are great. And it's like, cool. Well, why is it great? Like if I'm your customer, why is it great? What's my opportunity in today's market? And that's what we're hoping to share with you today, and what we're always looking to share with you in these videos. And so if you're a homeowner and you're thinking about making kind of an auxiliary move, meaning you're thinking, well, we're kind of running out of space and we'd like to get into that something a little bit larger, or we're tired of the subdivision life and we want to get that home on a few acres, or fill in the blank, whatever it is that you kind of want to do. Not so much the need to move because you're being relocated, but the want to do. This is your opportunity to take advantage of it, because again, with inventory levels basically hitting where we would have expected them back in December. Look, December of last year, 2,488 homes that were on the market in Nashville. We're at, you know, barely 200 more homes than that, and we're still in the middle of the selling season. Like things don't quote unquote slow down. If you look at this, typically until November into December. I mean, last year the change was almost 400 homes different between November and December. If this trend line keeps going, or even if it just stays the same for the next few months and then drops 400 between between November and December, you're going to be looking at less than 2,000 homes. Like that's prime selling season for a seller. And so, anyway, just throwing that out there because every micro market in our area is a little different. So if you do want that home on a few acres or whatever the case may be, it may not be as extreme of a seller's market there. So you may be able to cash out now and then kind of call your shot a little bit more with your purchase. So
For sure. Yeah, we recently had a listing signed, and the our client was saying, just make it really easy. And honestly, it's likely the easiest time you'll ever have selling a house, for many, many reasons. But if you're thinking about it, like Rob said, for the want to reasons, then it's definitely worth taking a look at.
yeah, like that listing, we'll share. I won't share the address or any like exact details, and yet that one it was a rental property for our seller, and they didn't want to own the rental property anymore. They kind of bought it on a whim about a decade ago, and decided not to. They didn't like it. They just had it, and long story short, they wanted the process to be easy. One showing, full price offer, made it super simple on them, and they're thrilled about it. And so, knock on wood, we get to closing just fine. And a point being, like Jessica said, this is the time we can make it easy on y'all. So if you're interested in finding out more, maybe you want to know what your home's worth, maybe you want to know, just what you could get into because rates are still low. So if you are selling and buying, rates are super low. Call us 615-591-5665. You can email us info at Foglia properties.com. You can also comment on here or shoot us a PM. We're happy to help. Before we end the Facebook Live here, are there any questions on there, Jessica, that we've seen?
Nope, not any questions. We got a like from Josh. Hey, Josh.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate y'all checking it out. If y'all have any questions, reach out, like we said, and we're happy to be of assistance and to be a resource again to continue to educate and guide y'all the right way. And until next time, I guess we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, y'all. Bye.